Hi to everyone present in this session. Today we're going to talk about the Congo Wars. My team is confirmed by Ana Gimna Flores Fajardo and me, Diana Guerrero Mora.
The content of our presentation will be divided in two. We will explain the first Congo War, its historical context, the origin of the conflict, its beginning, and at last the end of the war. Then the second Congo War, we will explain the aftermath of this first Congo War, then its beginning, its development, and the end of the war.
So as Anna already mentioned, we're going to start with the first Congo War. Can you please change it? Regarding to this conflict, we're going to start talking about its historical context. So the first Congo War happened between 1996 and 1997, and it was a 9-month war in Zaire aimed at overthrowing the nationalist dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. And the forces opposing to Mobutu were led by the guerrilla, led by Laurent Desire Kabila, who had the support from neighboring countries, especially from Rwanda and Uganda. So we're going to start talking about its independence from Belgium. We have to remember that the Democratic Republic emerged into the nationalist movement with the holding of parliamentary elections in May 1960. After that, in July 1960, also the Belgian troops intervened to protect the Belgian interests and attempted to secede from Katanga province. So this situation led to Lumumba appealing to the United Nations Security Council. So regarding to that, in August 1961, the United Nations established a military mission in the Democratic Republic with the aim of disarming the Belgian forces in Katanga. So then the civil war broke out in the country, and the figure of Colonel Joseph Mobutu emerged after 5 years of fighting, and he seized the power in 1965. So also another point that is important to mention is that in the strategic global context of the Cold War, Zaire benefited from the interests of the United States and became a launching point for operations against Angola, which was then supported by the Soviet Union. So in that sense, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, Zaire ceased to be a strategic interest of the United States, and without the American support, the stability that Zaire had enjoyed in the past was interrupted. Another point that is important to mention is the genocide in Rwanda, supported by Mobutu. We're going to talk about this eventually. Can you please change it? Another point that is important to mention is that when Mobutu took power, it was very resistant to its administration, because he, when got into the first years of his administration, failed to deliver the promised reforms. And as I mentioned before, with the end of the Cold War, the United States aid also ended up, and Mobutu started to lose power. Then in 1981, there was a decree denying the Banyamulungis the nationality and their ownership of the land they were lived and worked. The Banyamulungis are an ethnic group conformed mainly by Tutsis. And when we talk about that the Rwanda genocide was an important point to the first Congo War, is because that what it is known as the Great Lake Refugee Crisis caused by the Rwanda genocide triggered the flight of 2 million Hutu refugees from Rwanda after the Rwandan Patriotic Front took control of the country in July 1994. So the direct consequence for Zaire was a massive influx of refugees into the Kivu region, including the remnants of the army and the Interahamwe militia, defeated by the Tutsi offensive, who settled in makeshift camps that housed more than 1 million Hutus. Can you please change it? So, as I mentioned before, this decree that Mobutu stated in 1981 and was one of the main points that caused the beginning of the war. And after that, there was a decree of expulsion of the Banamulinges, stated by the governor of the South Kivu. This statement said that they had to leave Zaire under the threat of penalty. However, the Banamulenges revealed and allied with the Mobutu's opponents and formed the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Zaire, or Congo. And this alliance was supported by the heads of states in the Great Lake region, notably by Paul Kagame, president of Rwanda, and Yoweri Museveni, president of Uganda. Can you please change it? So heading to the end of the war, we can say that the attempts by the United Nations to negotiate were unsuccessful. However, they did succeed in getting Mobutu to accept this Kedi as a prime minister and the formation of a government with members that also were part of the alliance already mentioned. However, this alliance had a rejection of the prime minister, which caused them to take the offensive and to continue to take the capital. So, following the failure of the peace talks between Mobutu and Kabila in early May 1997, on 17 May 1997, and after a lighting campaign through the capital, Tshisekedi was forced out of the country, and Kabila entered Kanisha, seizing power and uniting judicial, legislative, and military power in his person. Finally, regarding to the end of the war, in August 1998, all members of the government of Tutsi origin withdrew from the government when Kabila asked Rwanda and Uganda mercenaries to return home. So, as Anna will mention eventually, this was one of the contexts that provoked the breakout of the Second Congo War. Can you please change it? Also, we have to remain which were the main actors during the First War. These were the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, then the Banamulenge, which were the Tutsi ethnic group, and finally, but not least, the Forces Armées Zairenes, which were the National Army under Mobutu regime. Can you please change it? Finally, in this image, we can see how were the movements of the Uganda and Rwanda's armies to the territory of the Congo. So that would be all for the First War.
So we will continue on with the Second Congo War, which took place from 1998 until 2003. We will start with the aftermath of the First Congo War, which was during the Kabila's presidential term. And we have to note that his term was disappointing because the economy remained in a state of severe despair and didn't improve as well for the corruption. It was a really corrupt government, so the government did not improve from past terms, and also Kabila started a centralization campaign, which bring a conflict with minority groups, and he was being accused as another Mobutu. So they were comparing him to Mobutu, and his government was centralized on authoritarianism and human rights abuses. Also, the tensions between his allies and the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo were increasing. They were bad, and especially the ethnic tensions between the Tutsis and the Hutus, which Diana already mentioned, that happens had been happening since the first Congo War. So we'll proceed with the beginning of the conflict. We have to go back to July 1998, in which this year the tensions increased a lot, and because Kabila took the decision of dismissing his Rwandan chief of staff, Kabanebe, and he replaced him with the Congolese native, Kidwa. And then 2 weeks later, he decided that, well, he ordered all the Rwandan and Ugandan military forces to leave the country. So the military forces left with no explanation. And the people that were more alarmed were the Banyamulenge Tutsi group because of the tensions with the Hutus and other ethnic groups. And in August 1998, the Banyamulenge erupted into a rebellion. And because of this rebellion, the Rally for Congolese Democracy, the RCD, emerged. And this RCD was supported by Rwanda and Uganda, and also they took control of Bukaru and Uriba in the Kirus. Also, they occupied a huge part of the northeastern part of the Congo. And Kabila took a really important role agitating the public opinion against the Tutsis, which led to lynching between the ethnic groups and many other people, which resulted in a lot of deaths. Also, we have to know that Uganda created a rebel group, which was the Movement for the Liberation of Congo, and this movement joins like all the factions that were part of the conflict. Later on, with the development of the conflict, the rebel forces advanced a lot until they reached Kinshasa, and Kabila was supporting the Hutu militants because they were having like a significant force in the east. And later on, Kabila requested help, and the ones who responded were the Southern African Development Community, and then Namibia, Angola, and Zimbabwe supported him. Also, the Rwandan President Paul Kagame, he admitted that they were supporting the RCD rebels, and this was like pretty shocking. And it is said that this confession was influenced by Nelson Mandela. And in January 1999, Rwanda, Uganda, Angola, Namibia, and Zimbabwe agreed on a ceasefire, but they didn't tell the rally. So the conflict continued because they were not invited. And it was until July 1999 with the Lusaka ceasefire agreement, which was signed by the 6 warring countries and the RCD, where they will cooperate in tracking, disarming, and documenting all armed groups in the Congo, especially the ones, the forces identified with the Rwandan genocide. And the Security Council deployed 90 officers in order to support the ceasefire. And it was known that months later, the Ugandan forces clashed with the Rwandan forces again. And it was in February of 2000 where the United Nations created the United Nations Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have here a map where we can see all the countries that took place and took a role in this Congo War. They were a lot, and we can see if they were allied with Kabila, or they had like an extensive participation with force or only with political support, and who was allied with the rebels. And heading to the end of the war, one of the most important part of the end of the war was the assassination of Laurent Desire Kabila. He was shot and killed at the presidential palace in Kinshasa. And his son, Joseph Kabila, becomes president. He took his place. And in this same year, he met with the Rwandan president, Paul, and Rwanda, Uganda, and the Congo agreed to a UN pullout plan. So he was doing great negotiations, and he was taking steps in order to end this war. And Rwanda was losing force because the government of the younger Kabila was really strong. And from April to December of 2002, under the leadership of South Africa, peace talks were held with all the parties of this war. And with the Sun City Agreement, they reached an agreement, but it was like a really weak agreement. So they had to start more negotiations. And in July of 2002, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo signed a peace deal, which was called the Pretoria Accord. And it has in its objectives the withdrawal of 20,000 rundown soldiers in the Congo and the dismantling of the Hutu militants. Also, later on, they had the Luanda Agreement, which formalized the peace between Congo and Uganda. And in December 2002, the Congolese parties signed the Global and All-Inclusive Agreement, which, like its prime accomplishment, was the transitional governance. And in July of 2003, the transitional government, which obligated the parties to carry out a plan to reunite the country and to have a process of transition of government. And it was in July of 2006 where the first elections the first elections were held in the Democratic Republic of the Congo after approving a new constitution. And we have to note that this war was really, really big, and it caused 5.4 million deaths. 2 million people were displaced because of this war. And the second Congo War is the deadliest conflict worldwide since the World War II. So it was pretty big and deadly. And also it had a lot of environmental impacts, but one of the worst was the loss of 1.61% of the Congo's forest. So as you can see, the huge impact it had. And well, it ended with the Pretoria Accord, but also they were aftermath consequences, and the ethnic groups tensions are still there. So that would be all for the Congo Wars, and this is our references, and we hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much.